Welcome to the Leading Hope Podcast with Kevin Jack. Your influence will lead people somewhere, lead them towards hope. Everyone has 20 minutes to learn to become a better leader. Make it count.
Welcome to Leading Hope with Kevin Jack. I'm your host, VJ Williams, here with my friend, Pastor Kevin Jack. Thank you for joining us and taking time out of your day to become a better leader. We release a new episode every Wednesday, so we'd love for you to subscribe, share on social media, and bring others along with us on this journey of becoming a better leader. Visit leadinghope.online to get updates and find more about the Leading Hope community. We are in this series of, what are we in this series of?
Leading through uncertainty.
See, I was uncertain.
Oh, look at you.
Yeah, you like that? You like how I did that? We are, this is episode 24, and it is called Pivot.
Pivot.
Oh, man, Ross Geller is in my head right now.
Pivot. I laughed the whole time when I was writing the notes for this.
I'm sure you did. This should be a fun one.
It should be. Hey, so today we're going to talk about planning. And I want to let you know on the front end, hey, this will be a shorter episode within there. We don't want to waste your time with superfluous content, but there are some just really important notes we need to make on planning, especially when you're leading through uncertainty that we want you to be aware of. And once that content's out, we'll be done. We'll bid you adieu and to have a fantastic day, and we'll see you back here next week. So, 3 notes, 3 quick points on planning, and then we'll have a conversation on this. First piece, don't neglect initial planning. Don't neglect initial planning. When you're leading through uncertainty, don't neglect initial planning. Dwight Eisenhower said, plans are useless, but planning is essential. Plans are useless, but planning is essential. What he's getting at is the plans that you make will not be the plans that you use, but it will shape your thinking and help you gain perspective in powerful ways that you couldn't if you hadn't done it. Your plan should define your actions, but not deal for every possibility. So don't neglect planning because they'll change. You'll always be further ahead than if you had done nothing. And people struggle with that balance. I don't have a way to clearly define it for you, but I just want you to be aware of the tension. For some people, plans must deal for every eventuality, every possibility. And to go, the reality is just to be blunt on it, you're not smart enough. You're not smart enough to know every possibility. You're not smart enough to know everything that can come your way. You are smart enough to deal with the most likely things, but don't waste your time on plan D through N, okay? Like, be aware of what you're trying to accomplish and seek to kind of move forward within that. Now, that brings us to the second thing, okay? As part of your planning, prepare people to pivot. Create an expectation on the front end that you don't fully know what's going to happen. If we go back to the last episode that we had, we talked about knowing what is unknown. Know what your variables are. Know what you're trying to accomplish, and know what could change that will change how you're going to respond. And so one of the clearest things you can give on messaging is just to say, hey, things will change over time. This is if we could step out of times of uncertainty for just a second, and then I'll get into some practical applications and illustrations on this. But if we could step out of leading through uncertainty and just leadership generally, this is what I find, is that leaders make this continuous mistake where they try to get people to buy into the plan instead of getting them to buy into the thing that the plan is seeking to do. They try to get people to buy into the method rather than getting people to buy into the vision. And what happens over and over again is the plans have to change. And when you vision casted towards the plan, instead of vision casting towards the vision, when the plans change, people act like everything's changing and you're abandoning everything that you're about. So this is who we are as a church. Let me talk about it from this perspective. We want to be someone's first church. We don't simply want to be someone's next church in this constantly just kind of change, this parade that people make through different churches and which one will meet their needs the most in the moment. We want to be someone's first church. We want to be their introduction into faith. Our church knows this. How we're seeking to accomplish that is always going to change. And so as that changes, I'll explain why. I'll explain why we think it's going to work. And I'll sometimes explain why it might not work on the front end. And that message will change based upon which group I'm speaking to. But I'm never seeking to get people to buy into the plan. I want them bought into the vision. And I'm creating that expectation on the front end of this will change over time. I'm not smart enough to figure out everything that could possibly happen. So I'll always remember this story about this. This has been kind of etched in my memory. In college, I'm a part of a dodgeball tournament. So we're playing in this dodgeball tournament. And we're playing with the big red kickballs, which everybody thinks are the ideal dodgeballs, but they're not, because they're really easy to catch if you throw them above the waist and you just trap it on your chest and that's fine. So we're playing with the big red kickballs. We're playing on this super long gym. They're playing game after game. And what has happened is as the game has gone on, people have realized that if you just stand at the back, anyone who's throwing this ball the length of half the court, it's easy to either dodge or catch. So the game has now become, no one's really trying to hit anyone. Everyone's just kind of trying to throw away from people and then hoping that the other team throws right at them so they're able to catch. So I go over to the guys who are running the tournament and I say, this isn't working. You need to shorten the lines. Like, you need to change how close people are throwing at each other. Otherwise, we're going to stand here forever. And their response was, we can't change the rules. The game has already started. And so we sat there for 20 minutes as two teams threw the ball as far away from the people as they possibly could, knowing that they're going to catch the ball. And I thought, oh my goodness, this is in the midst of this craziness of dodgeball, which you may think doesn't matter, but I take very seriously. That within the craziness of this dodgeball, there is this inability to pivot. And we all suffered for it. Like, we all just went through this game and it was just miserable. You go, this isn't working. And the people who have the authority and ability to change it are refusing to change it. And so on the front end, for you, okay, expect to pivot. Tell your team, you're going to have to pivot. How we start is not what we'll be doing halfway through this. And if you're unwilling to change plans, you'll be worse because of it. But you can build that flexibility, that agility into your team and into your culture on the front end. If you're just outspoken and saying, hey, this is what we're doing now, not what we're doing forever. This is what we're trying now. This is where we're headed. That's unchanging. But expect this to change. Now, third piece of this. When you pivot, because you will. If you're a good leader, you will. When you pivot, get input. When you pivot, get outside input. Get input from your team. If things are so in flux that your plans need to change, you better get input from your team as they change. Because they're going to see things that you don't see. Don't expect, oh, please, please, please. Don't expect that you're going to see everything that has happened, is happening, and could happen, and that you have all the information. If things are dynamic enough that your plans will need to change, which they will, please, please get input from your team on what they're seeing, what they're anticipating, and how they would react on their end. I have a couple teams in our church that I continuously go to from input. Now, at the end of the day, the decision's mine. Like, I've got to make the decision. We're not taking votes within our staff. That's not what's happening. Sometimes I'll take a vote just to see where everyone stands, but it's my decision, and I have to be held accountable for that. But just because it's my decision and I have to be held accountable for it doesn't mean I'm dumb enough to go, well, it's just my input that matters. So here's the perspective as a leader when it comes to planning. You're not smart enough to know everything that will change. But initial planning will get you ahead. You're not smart enough to know everything that needs to change. So pivoting at the right time will get you further ahead. Lay the plans initially. Tell people they're going to change. Change as it needs to happen with input, with this open-handed mentality that goes, I don't know everything that can happen, but I will continue to do what's best with the information that I have.
Perfect. The first thing that I want to cover really, really quickly, and we don't have to spend a ton of time on this, but I think it's important for our listeners to understand, because you're talking about obviously not neglecting initial planning, that we can't do that. So obviously when we're doing that, we're finding, hey, what's the low-hanging fruit?
Yep.
Attempt to identify the showstoppers. What's going to stop this whole thing?
Yep.
Those are things that we should do. But can you spend some time talking about what we should not do when we're in those types of plannings? Like, what is the things, like which piece of that don't we need to waste time on?
Mm-hmm. So this is it's always interesting, this dynamic on here of going, when you're leading through uncertainty, things are very much in flux. So let's talk about it specifically within this context. The thing that I find people just run to one side or the other is either they have no plans and they're just flying by the seat of their pants, have no idea what's going to happen. But the far more significant thing that I continuously see is people feel like their plans have to be perfect.
Yeah.
That they have to deal with every possibility, they have to deal with every variable, and they literally have to have a contingency plan for everything that could possibly come up.
Yeah.
And a piece to go like, man, move forward. Like, you're going to learn far more by experience than you will in your head within all of this. And I think that's just the greatest struggle that people face, is they're unwilling to move forward without assurance that what they set out is going to work. I assume it's not going to work.
Yeah.
But I assume I'm going to adapt, and as I adapt, it'll work.
Yeah, having that on the front end seems to be a very practical step to get your mind right for whatever's coming. Yeah. That's good. The next thing you talked about was pivoting. I have written down here, planners gonna plan, y'all. So because planners do plan, they just like to plan no matter what.
We should change the title of this episode.
Planners gonna plan.
Planners gonna plan.
But that's what I wrote down, because they are. Let's talk about being flexible. Why it's so important, not only as a team member but as a leader. You gotta be flexible. Here's what we know, right? My plan today is only as good as my next one that's coming.
Oh, that's good.
I mean, that's it, good. Right? Because I know today and where we're at, where we're going. Like, I have a lot of things I need to do today. You have a lot of things you need to do today.
Yeah.
But it's gonna change, and so my plan today is only as good as my next one, which is coming.
Mm-hmm.
Talk more about the flexibility that we have to have as leaders.
I think there is not a perfect amount of flexibility. You go, how flexible do I have to be? You have to be as flexible as your environment is.
That's good.
And that's it at the end of the day. If the outside world is changing at this pace, you better be that flexible. And I don't know, we think it's an admission of our lack of intelligence that our plans aren't working out. But to go, you should assume that you're smarter a week from today than you were a week ago. Like, right?
Yeah.
To go like, I'm smarter now. I have more information now. I have more experience now. And so I can make a better decision now than I did back then, even if it was just a week ago. As they go, it's the fool who doesn't learn from their circumstances. It's the fool who doesn't learn from their mistakes. Anticipate you're going to get smarter, and let smarter you improve on the decisions that dumber you made a week ago.
That's great. And then continuing on this, the last one we have, and then we'll wrap up this short episode today. You talked about good leaders pivoting, and you said if it's a dynamic situation that you need to pivot, then you need to get input from the team. Is there a strategy you employ that would help leaders do this without creating chaos?
A lot of this has to do with the trust level of your team that's already there as a foundation. But I would say it like this. For me, I'm mostly doing this one-on-one.
Okay.
Occasionally in environments, I'm doing this within a whole team, but I'm almost always doing it one-on-one first before I'm in the whole environment. I need the pulse of a couple people before I walk into a meeting, because it could go a completely different direction. And I need to be able to just know the tone of my team so I'm knowing how I'm going to respond.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's very practical and very helpful. All right, well, go ahead and let's wrap up this. What is one thing you want someone to take away from episode 24, which is planners gonna pivot?
honestly, pivot.
Pivot.
Like, pivot. Change what you need to do to seek, like, the vision that you're seeking to accomplish.
That's great. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Don't forget to rate, review, subscribe. Let us know what's going on in your leadership areas and your environments. Visit leadinghope.online. Send us your stories. We'd love to hear from you. And we can't wait to hear you back for next week for episode 25. Remember, everyone has 20 minutes to learn to become a better leader. Make it count.